Good morning. Welcome to the virtual home of Calgary Unitarians. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are on your journey of faith or search for meaning, welcome. If you're visiting for the first time or for the first time in a long time, know that we are grateful to have you with us. We come together in beloved community to grow in wisdom, welcome and deepen relationships, and act for a just and sustainable world. As always, we start by acknowledging the land we are on and the people for whom this is their traditional territory. The people of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Siksika, the Gani, and the Kainai First Nations, as well as the Tsuut'ina First Nation and the Stoney Nakoda, comprised of the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Wesley First Nations. And Mohkinstsis, the Blackfoot word for where Calgary is now situated, is also home to Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. In offering a land acknowledgement, we honor those who have long been her stewards and accept our shared responsibility for being good caretakers. We of the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta, the treaty signed September 22nd, 1877, acknowledge that treaties were entered into as a collaboration between settlers and Indigenous peoples, making us all treaty people. My name is Pamela Rickey, Pam Rickey, and I use the pronouns she and her, and I have the privilege of serving on your board of trustees. And this congregation is special to me because here I can explore my own spiritual path, supported by others. And together with people whose values I share, my life becomes meaningful. Now just remember, please join us after the service for a virtual coffee hour, where we meet in small breakout rooms and get a chance to socialize.
Good morning. We will be lighting our chalice this morning, which we will be seeing momentarily. There it is, our beautiful chalice. Thank you, Mariana Louise. We light our chalice this morning with the words of Reverend Dr. David Breeden. We gather into this circle. We gather into this circle of care, to dream, to envision, to embody and achieve the compassion we dream, the justice we envision, the dignity of each in an ever-growing circle of love and justice. Let us worship together. Good morning. I'm the Reverend Shelly Thompson. My pronouns are she and her, and I am so privileged to be the interim minister here at Calgary Unitarians. It is so wonderful to be together this day. I'd like to remind you once again that we are in the process of calling one and all to check in and see how you're doing and work on our connections and see what we can do during this crazy COVID time to help everyone participate and feel their sense of belonging and connection with our wonderful faith community. So if you haven't already received a call, you will be in this coming week, so long as we have your current contact information. So do please double check our directory, or if you have reason to believe you're not in that directory or we don't have your correct information, please contact our wonderful administrator, Todd, office@calgaryunitarians.ca, to give us that right phone number so that we can reach out and connect with you. We'd love to hear how you're doing and how we might better serve and connect with you during these difficult times. And we will also be following up. There's more to come this spring. Our Committee on Shared Ministry will be sending out a survey, and there's a lot of interested parties involved in that. We've got our team that is trying to put together our search committee for our new minister, and we need your input on who we think will be the best to serve us in that capacity, and all sorts of other leadership opportunities coming up. And we want to know if you have that interest or if you have recommendations for us. So do please connect with us, share with us, let us know what's going on with you, and give us your input and participation. It's the way we best make this community a representative of your passion, your interests, your values, and your desires to make the world a better place. We look forward to talking with you. Thank you so much. And now we will sing one of our favorite hymns. Love to sing it and never tire of it. Please join me in singing, Oh Yeah Yeah.
We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know within, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. It will be hard, we know, and the road will be muddy and rough, but we'll get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah. We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know within, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. It will be hard, we know, and the road will be muddy and rough, but we'll get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Oh yeah, yeah, 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 yeah. Good morning, everyone. It is so great to see all of you this morning. I'm DRE Sheila, and my pronouns are she and her. And coming up, I'm so excited. I'm inviting everyone to make a Valentine for the Calgary Unitarians. So this could be a drawing or just a few words about what you love about this congregation or your friends or community, and just scan or take a picture and send it to me at dre@calgaryunitarians.ca, and I'll share them on the Sunday, February 13th coming up. Just a small way that we can all spread a little bit of love this month coming up. And today we're talking about being intentionally accountable to our eighth principle. And for me, I think about truth and reconciliation and how we are sharing those ideas and teachings with our children and grandchildren. And so in this week's Children and Youth newsletter, we have a video called Reconciliation Begins with You and Me, and it interviews children who are being taught about residential schools in Ottawa from grades 5 to grade 11. And my 10-year-old and I watched it yesterday, and I could see it had a big impact on her, hearing from children her age about what they were learning. And so it's really great. Check that out in our newsletter. And if you don't get the newsletter and you're like, Sheila says some really great things in that newsletter every week, just email me and I'll sign you up and you'll get that every week. So it's pretty good. And today's story that I want to share with all of you is called Stolen Words. And it's another way to start the conversation with our children and grandchildren. And it's recommended for ages 6 to 9. So it's really good because sometimes it's hard. You're like, this is a big topic. How do I even start the conversation? Here we go. Stolen Words, written by Melanie Florence and illustrated by Gabrielle Grimard. She came home from school today, skipping and dancing, humming a song under her breath, clutching a dream catcher she had made from odds and ends, bits of string and plastic beads and brightly colored feathers. Her glossy braids danced against her shoulders, swaying with her, black as a raven's wing. Grandpa, whoops, sorry. Let's go back one page. Oh no, hold on, let me go back. You can't see it, but I have things on my screen and they went right in front of my words. So now we're back on track. Grandpa, she asked, clutching his hand, spinning his arm before dropping it again.
How do you say grandfather in Cree? He stopped breathing for a moment, a lifetime, to his 7-year-old. He looked down at her sadly. I don't remember, he answered. I lost my words a long time ago. A frown clouded her face. How do you lose words, Grandpa? She asked. They took them away, he answered. She thought for a moment. Where did they take them? She asked. Where they took all of us, he said, away from home, away from laughter and soft words, away from our mothers who cried for us. She reached for his gnarled hand. Who took you away, Grandpa? She asked quietly. Men and women dressed in black, talking to us with words we did not know, he answered. They reached home and they sat on their stairs together. Where did they take you, Grandpa? She asked. Away to a school that was cold and lonely, where angry white faces raised their voices and their hands when we used our words, he answered. They took our words away and locked them. They took our words and locked them away, punished us until we forgot them, until we sounded like them. Harsh, sharp words, so different from the sound of our beautiful ones. She touched his weathered face and tried to wipe the sadness away with her soft hands. She looked down at her lap and handed him the dream catcher that she had made for her room. You take this, Grandpa, she said. Maybe it will help you find your words again. He smiled at her, his granddaughter, and touched her innocent face, a face that had never known hard words or raised hands. He smiled and kissed her head. The next day, she skipped out of school again, smiling widely at her grandfather. She stopped in front of him and took a deep breath. Tansy Nimusim, she said. His eyes widened. She smiled brighter than the sun. I found your words, Grandpa, she said. She pulled a tattered, well-worn paperback out of her book. Introduction to Cree, it said. My teacher helped me find this for you at the library. He reached for it, his hand shaking, and opened it, feeling the soft, much-loved pages under his fingers. Nusism, he whispered. Granddaughter. The words felt familiar in his mouth. It felt like home, his mother. He turned the pages of the book carefully. Messenakin, book. He turned another, word after word. Pikaswin, language. His words, pages and pages of them. He looked at his granddaughter, his Noisim. Thank you. Taniki, he said. Will you read to me? She asked, taking his hands in hers and leading him home. Will you teach me your words? His heart danced as he nodded, holding the book against his chest. Oh, what a wonderful story. And for me, sharing stories like this touch our hearts, and teaching our children and grandchildren is a vital part of reconciliation. As Timothy B. Tyson says, if there's to be reconciliation, first, there must be truth. And now to Pam for our reflection.
Dismantling racism in action. I want to start today by putting into action something I've learned. We are not all white. So I'm going to start by acknowledging those of you who are listening to this reflection who do not identify as white. And I ask your patience with me, a white person, as I fumble through sharing what I'm learning. And I ask that you give me any feedback you have the energy to impart, or just to simply forgive me and my trespasses as we all travel this action road together. Our new 8th principle, adopted at our December congregational meeting, reads, individual and communal action that accountably dismantles racism and other structural barriers to full inclusion in ourselves and our institutions. Our other 7 principles say what we believe in, the principles by which we live our lives, but this one specifically commits us to action. So how do we do that? How do we embody this principle in action? Well, I would say we've already started. We as a group, we've hosted and participated workshops on white fragility, anti-racism, and decolonization. We've watched films together and discussed them. And we've had speakers like Reverend Pat Trudeau and her husband, Dr. Wilburn Hayden. We've had Professor Barb Barnes, Chantal Chagnon has visited us, and the Saskatchewan River Water Walkers, and Reverend Fulgence Ndagi Jimana, forgive me, Fulgence, and others address us at Sunday worship services. And in December, Reverend Shelly attended a drum making retreat, and she brought that experience and what she learned back to share with us. For the last 2 years, through our membership in the Calgary Alliance for the Common Good, Jocelyn Keith Asante, Heather Walker, Minister Emerita Deborah Falk, and I have been involved in CACG's Reconciliation Research Action Team. And due to intensive efforts, this Indigenous elder-led team is now meeting regularly with the Calgary Police to bring Indigenous awareness training, more Indigenous liaison officers, and trauma-informed training to their services. Jocelyn and I and Reverend Shelly have also been attending elder-led reconciliation sessions through CACG to get guidance on how to bring truth, healing, and reconciliation into our Calgary Unitarians organization. So those are some of the steps we have already been taking as an organization, but many of us are looking at what we can do as Unitarians personally to honor our new 8th principle and transform our learning into action in our own lives. For myself, I belong to an Indigenous interest group at Calgary Association of Lifelong Learners. It was through that group that I got to know Professor Barb Barnes, who came to talk to us at a Sunday service last summer. Remember, she did the Muffins for Granny service. Currently, we're going through the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's 94 calls to action, researching what, if anything, has been done on the various action requests, and talking about how we might hold our churches, schools, and governments to the task of responding to those requests. When Robert and I are traveling, well, when we're able to travel, we make a point of finding out who are the original occupants of the land we're visiting. For example, when we were in the Yukon, we learned that there are 14 First Nations in that one territory alone. We made a point of visiting Indigenous cultural facilities, Indigenous museums, several art galleries, and a historic village site. On all our travels, we look for such opportunities. One of my favorite things to do is go to a powwow. We've attended powwows in Calgary, Vancouver, Kamloops, Peterborough, and Southern California. Other opportunities we watch for are plays, dances, and feasts. Also, when we introduce ourselves as we travel, we say we live on Blackfoot territory before we say we're from Calgary. And when we chat with other tourists, we ask them, whose land do you live on? That gets some interesting responses. Most people don't know, but it makes them think. It raises awareness. Now that Robert and I are confined to Canada for a while, we're looking at Aboriginal-led tourism options here in Canada. For example, we've just learned about many chief tours right here in Calgary. We're going to be checking that out this summer. There are Indigenous-led tourism organizations all across Canada that any of you who are also chomping at the bit to travel could check out. And maybe later we could share our experiences through Sunday worship services, CU Fridays, religious education programs, things like that. This is another way to acknowledge, honor, respect, and support current day Indigenous land occupants and caregivers. Land caregivers, that is. Some of you might remember that when the Saskatchewan River Water Walkers visited us by Zoom, of course, last summer, I made a vow to honor those walkers and to honor our sacred waters by picking up refuse on all my hikes from then on. Well, that very day, I put a rubber glove and garbage bag in my backpack, and I've been honoring that promise diligently. In 1 week of hiking in July, I passed out bags to everybody else, and I initiated fellow hikers into my Water Walker Promise Group, putting Indigenous teachings into action. This Christmas, Robert and I went to the Indigenous art market at the Kirby Center for some of our Christmas shopping. I've learned to appreciate Indigenous art as just that, art, and not simply craft. And I've become willing to pay, when I can afford it, art level prices rather than looking for bargains. When we're looking to support Indigenous people, I think it's important to shift from our white privileged position of helping to real appreciation and support by buying artworks and paying ticket prices that reflect the value of the hours, education, and talent put into these products and productions. Calgary has a lively arts culture, including the Indigenous theatre company Making Treaty 7. They welcome volunteers, which is an opportunity to interact with them, as well as being able to watch their productions. An easy action step for all of us could be to keep an eye out for what events are coming up and let each other know, and perhaps attend as a group. Jocelyn tried to arrange a trip to Blackfoot Crossing at Cluny this last summer, but with the chaos around COVID and summer holidays, wasn't able to get enough people interested, but maybe we could revisit that idea. I found that it's amazing what I can learn when I chat with vendors, filmmakers, artists, actors, writers at these and other multicultural events. I'm not very good at that yet, but I'm working on making the effort. It's an opportunity not only to learn something, but to connect on a personal level, to acknowledge people for who they are and what they do. I find that the more I learn, the more I interact with Indigenous peoples, the more I notice who I ignore as I'm going about my daily life. One of the actions I'm taking personally is to notice the voice in my head that says, watch out, when I encounter various different groups when I'm out and about. My parents' and teachers' voices that say, walk by quickly and don't make eye contact. And then to silence that voice and smile and say hi as I walk by. To make eye contact, to acknowledge the presence of another human being. One day, I had a great conversation with an Indigenous fellow bus traveler as we walked away from the C-train station together. As much as I can afford it, I buy books by Indigenous authors at local bookstores rather than from Amazon, and new instead of used, to make the writer's royalties as high as possible. I share the books with others who might not think to pick that book off a shelf, in the hopes that they might start looking for other works by that author or by other Indigenous authors. And good news for those of you who prefer ebooks and audiobooks, their royalties can be even higher in those formats. And then there are Indigenous news feeds like Windspeaker and Eagle Feather News, and podcasts like Anti Up, as in Auntie Pam, Anti Up, where a group of Indigenous women talk, as they put it, their important SHIT. By reading news and listening to Indigenous voices speaking to and with each other, we can get a glimpse of the world through their eyes and see how they interpret or are impacted by local, national, and international events and issues. That can help us have informed conversations with our Indigenous friends and neighbors without stepping in it, as Reverend Emerita Deborah puts it, without stepping in it as often. I'm sure other cultural communities have similar news offerings that we could learn about and have a look at, share with each other. We can also learn from the examples of others who are taking action in their lives and work. Non-Indigenous scientist and author Suzanne Simard, for instance, in her very recent book, Finding the Mother Tree, not only acknowledges peoples who were displaced from the lands she describes, she also acknowledges that the forest research she conducts using Western European methods results in new knowledge for her and her colleagues, but actually affirms teachings Indigenous peoples have been trying to share with Europeans for hundreds of years. We are all related, interconnected, nourished, and supported by each other, and cannot thrive without each other. That's the lesson. CACG Indigenous organizer Suzanne Carrillo-Deuce tells us that reconciliation is not just learning historical truths, apologizing, making restitution, but actually being willing to change, to incorporate what we learn into how we do things. People of other cultures, she says, will not be comfortable joining organizations and communities until we Europeans change our structures and systems. After the problems the CUC encountered with Robert's Rules of Order last year, many of us Unitarians are now investigating new approaches to decision-making, approaches that reflect other cultures' ways of making sure that every voice is heard, that decisions are crafted in a way that addresses everyone's needs and concerns, taking action under our new 8th principle. When we Calgary Unitarians voted to adopt this principle, we also put in place a requirement that we hold ourselves accountable by including a report on our actions at our annual congregational meetings. So that's my reflection on putting our 8th principle into action. Some small steps, but steps nevertheless. Barb Barnes and other teachers on this path continually remind us, take a step, no matter how small. That's the only way a journey can begin.
Thank you so much, Pam. It's really wonderful. For our meditation time today, I'd like us all to be spending some time thinking about how important it is for all of us to participate in the change process. Unitarian Transcendentalist minister and abolitionist Theodore Parker famously said, "I do not pretend to understand the moral universe. The arc is a long one. My eye reaches but little ways. I cannot calculate the curve and complete the figure by the experience of sight. I can divine it by conscience, and from what I see, I am sure it bends toward justice." Well, I love Teddy Parker, and some of his work and words are very inspiring. But as a white man of privilege, I think his surety was a sad miscalculation that could in fact be used as an excuse for apathy. I find the truth about the moral arc of the universe to be better expressed by the incomparable abolitionist and activist Frederick Douglass, who said, "If there is no struggle, there is no progress. Those who profess to favor freedom, yet depreciate agitation, are men who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roar of its many waters. This struggle may be a moral one, or it may be a physical one, or it may be both moral and physical. But it must be a struggle. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will." So here is the truth, as I see it. We can and must all do something to make a difference. Incremental change is just as important as the major shifts that grab headlines. Changing hearts and minds, one person at a time, one day at a time, one action at a time, intentionally altering our perceptions and our practices, just as Pam has described to us. This has a ripple effect on the people around us. It's this kind of contagious consciousness raising in action that brings about lasting change in society. We are the ones who cause that arc to bend toward justice. We can use our power of choice as consumers to support IBPOC businesses and service providers. We can be agitators in the realm of politics and policy. We can be courageous interrupters of injustice and racism whenever we see it or hear it. We can rise and add our voices alongside those in the struggle who are demanding change. And we can have tough conversations with those around us at home, at work, in every sphere of influence we have. We need to speak up. We can read and listen to literature and music from IBPOC authors and artists, just like the story that DRE Sheila shared with us. I think that's a wonderful way, reading with your grandkids or your kids, to start having these conversations. The children have brilliant insight into this and are an inspiration to us all. And we can learn more about our history and the cultures of Indigenous nations. I just signed up for the free course Indigenous Canada that's starting again from the University of Alberta. So many have taken it and just rave about how wonderful it is. And I'm so excited. It's a free online course. It's 12 lecture series led by Indigenous scholars and experts. And I think it's just such an amazing opportunity. So that's going on right now. You can all sign up for that as well. It'd be fun to talk about. So for our meditation time today, I have two more quotes for us that inspire me as one person in the world who would like to make it a better place, so that we can think about, for a few moments after I read them, think about what you're going to do or what you have been doing in your own life to make manifest our commitment to making the world truly a more just, inclusive, welcoming, and peaceful place. American author, historian, and Unitarian minister Edward Everett Hale said, "I am only one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but I can still do something. And because I can't do everything, I will not refuse to do the something that I can do." And then one of my favorites, the cultural anthropologist Margaret Mead said, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens, like Unitarian Universalists, can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." Let's take a couple of moments together to think about our collective power to make change and to bend that arc of the moral universe toward justice. Now is the time that we share our joys and sorrows, cares and concerns with one another. We light a candle for the joys, the celebrations, and the good news that we want to lift up to one another. Please feel free to share these in the chat with us. And we light a candle for the sorrows, the heaviness that we need others to help us carry. We are deeply saddened by the death of Judy Osborne's son, Stefan Esser. Stefan was well loved by many among us, especially those who had the privilege of singing with him. He will be greatly missed. Judy would like me to share with you that she is so grateful for the caring shawl that she's received to wrap herself in our love, and everyone who has just participated in the outpouring of calls and emails and so much love being sent her way during this time that we hope will bring her comfort and peace. As we sing this morning, I am sending you light. Please take this opportunity to sing it very intentionally with me, to and for one another. Send and receive the love that is so genuinely offered in this place of caring and commitment to one another. Please join me in singing, I am sending you light.
I am sending you light to heal you, to hold you. I am sending you light to hold you in love. I am sending you light to heal you, to hold you. I am sending you light to hold you in love. No matter where you go, no matter where you've been, you'll never walk alone. I feel you deep within. And I am sending you light to heal you, to hold you. I am sending you light to hold you in love. I am sending you light to heal you, to hold you. I am sending you light to hold you in love. No matter what you feel or what you choose to show, I'm always there for you. And so I want you to know that I am sending you light to heal you, to hold you. I am sending you light to hold you in love. I am sending you light to heal you, to hold you. I am sending you light to hold you in love. I walk the path with you. Go slow, dear one, don't hurry. I'll go just like you need to go. There is no need to worry. I am sending you light to heal you, to hold you. I am sending you light to hold you in love. I am sending you light to heal you, to hold you.
And now we have another reflection, this one offered by Marcia Epstein, who sadly this morning has come down with a cold and is not feeling well. So I have the privilege of sharing her words with you. She's given us a very honest and heartfelt reflection about her own journey with the topics of race and racism and coming to grips with the structural attitudes and challenges that so make up all of our societies and what she's doing about it in her own sphere as a teacher. These are the words of Marcia. As Pam so eloquently stated earlier, learning about the important issues that face us right where we live, even in this community, is an admirable process, but it isn't enough. My experience with such issues began in childhood, with parents themselves descended from Russian and Polish immigrants to New York, who held the reasonably egalitarian views of Jewish liberals leaning into socialism. I still have a proud memory of going with my mother to a civil rights march in the city of Milwaukee, where we lived, a march organized by a white Catholic priest along with local Black professionals and business people. It was exciting, and I was so proud that my family had Black friends who had invited us to the march. My father decided reluctantly not to come because it was the 1960s and his presence there might have threatened the security of his job. All of his professional colleagues were white, and not all were liberal. My parents' hearts and habits were generous, and I learned that poor people were deserving of respect, although maybe not quite as much respect as college graduates who worked hard. In the US at the time, poverty was associated with the need for charity and with two groups of people: working class whites who earned minimum wage and were poorly educated, and people who weren't white. Later writings on urban sociology published extensive analytical studies of why each group was disadvantaged. For whites, the causes were said to be industries that failed and caused massive unemployment. Nobody's fault, just a normal quirk of the economy. There were lots of reasons given for Black poverty: poor work habits, marriage breakups, poor food, alcohol and drugs, too many children to support, very different standards. So poverty was a problem that could be solved with better wages, better attitudes, and better education, right? It seemed so simple. Why wasn't it happening? The concept of systemic racism was never mentioned because very few people knew about it, except the people who were regularly experiencing it, and no one was listening to them. But this observation on my part is hindsight. I knew that there were social and economic levels of stratification everywhere, but it wasn't my problem. I was working to become a highly educated white professional, expert in all sorts of wonderful arcane subjects, leading to a charmed and creative life. Couldn't people of any complexion do that if they had talent? Moving to Canada to complete my education showed me a more complex side of the question. Despite its reputation in the northern states as a peaceful and rational country, Canada still had racism with numerous targets: Black people, immigrants from the Southern Hemisphere, the Francophones in Ontario, and the Anglophones in Quebec, and especially Indigenous peoples. As a descendant of immigrants rather than settlers, it took me a while to recognize that pattern of discrimination. Much of it was about land, which provides food and water and space and health and dignity. The land was stolen, and with it went access to all those necessities. That observation rested quietly for considerable time and then opened like an earthquake when I joined this community and the Calgary Alliance research team on truth and reconciliation. Systemic racism, discrimination, hatred of those who are different, reserves, destruction of culture, starvation, extermination. Wait, my remote ancestors in their communities were also exiled by foreign powers and prevented from owning land for centuries, vulnerable to aggression and periodically subjected to exile and mass murder. There, I had to get involved in finding some way to practice reconciliation. Of course, as Pam and I and so many others are learning, it's not just about being helpful to Indigenous people. We're the ones who need their help. So learning to accept it through listening to their experiences and providing channels for intercultural communication is the road we're starting to walk. With the help of Indigenous advisors, we negotiate with the Calgary police police service to help them recognize when their actions and attitudes hurt Indigenous people, both physically and emotionally. Beyond that collective road, there's one I can follow at work. Since I teach a course on intercultural communication taught to students in anthropology and developmental studies, I brought some of the issues around truth and reconciliation over to my students last term. It started with inviting 2 of Calgary Alliance's Indigenous staff advisors to be guest speakers in the class. They both accepted, leading the students into territory they had never experienced before. I expected students to be wary of centering their term projects on reconciliation because of its complexity, but the majority of them launched their research and group presentations on how to solve the local police issues, media reporting on the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, or the prominent artists and performers who are changing Canadian attitudes with podcasts and paintings. The remaining students focused on Afghanistan, so they weren't shirking either. All students in the groups reported on their positionality with regard to these issues and their personal backgrounds as instructed by the guest speakers. It's a sign of respect in Indigenous cultures to do that, and a fine foundation for cultural research. The compassion and creativity of the class projects were deeply gratifying, and I requested permission to keep some of the project papers. Here's an excerpt from a student working on Canadian press coverage of the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and Two-Spirit, describing what she learned from the research. Quote, "Over the course of researching for our 2 presentations, I've learned so much. Every new piece of information elicited raw emotion, from resentment of an unconcerned government to sorrow for each tragic experience I came across, to excitement, seeing Indigenous peoples find innovative ways to have their voices heard. The one takeaway that will forever resonate with me is the way in which the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and Two-Spirit community went about bringing awareness to this issue, not through reciprocating violence, but celebrating their Indigenous experiences in the face of the brutality the community and the Indigenous community as a whole face. Through my research, I came across countless individuals choosing to celebrate the beauty of Indigenous experience as a way to shift the reality they face." Beautiful. Thank you so much, Marcia, for those inspiring words and that encouragement about the journey. And now to Pam, who will provide our offering.
Yes, we've come to the part in our service where we have the opportunity to be generous. Our 4 others group this month of January is Awatan Healing Lodge Society. And that is a group here in the city who provides a shelter for victims of domestic violence. And Awatan means shield. And so their mission is to support and empower women and children against family violence. Awatan also, I think, sponsors the vigil for the missing and murdered Indigenous women. And they do really great work here in the city. Robert and I just finished watching a series on domestic violence, and we were really, really struck by the so many challenges that women having to flee their homes are faced with. In many Indigenous communities, your wealth is not measured by how much you've got in savings. Your wealth is measured by how much you give away. And I would ask us all to look at ourselves and see how wealthy we are today, and invite everyone to give as much as they are able. Thank you.
We extinguish our chalice, but not the spirit of transformation, love, and justice we carry in our hearts always. Our closing words today come from Reverend Karen Johnston. Do not be alone right now. Gather together. Gathering together grows courage in ourselves and in others who see the numbers swelling. It's a small thing, but right now, it's an important thing. Great sources of wisdom remind us, just because you cannot stem the tide of all hate, it is still right to do the thing you can do. These things add up. Your one thing and my one thing, his one thing and their one thing, and her one thing. Together, it becomes a big thing. Do not be alone right now. Any liberation, all liberation, is collective liberation. My freedom is bound within yours and yours with mine, inextricably. Let us together cast our lots doing this big thing, bending the moral arc of the universe towards justice. Please join me in singing a song that's new to me called 7. Here's Jane Perry to introduce and lead us.
Thank you, Shelly. This song 7 is by William Prince. William Prince is a singer-songwriter who hails from Peguis First Nation, which is a lot north of Winnipeg. He wrote this song for the 2016 Peguis First Nation graduating class, and he based it on the 7 sacred teachings of Indigenous law. This is a song that has been in the repertoire of Euphonia, our Thursday night church choir, for 4 or 5 years now. We've sung it a bit over that time, and sometimes you in the congregation have sung it with us. The most recent time we sang this, the song requires a soloist, and our soloist was Stefan Essert. I think of this as being Stefan's tune, so I'm thinking of him this morning. Stefan passed away on Monday, and I know his mother and his sister and his auntie are all here with us in the service this morning, so I'm honoring Stefan with this song today. When William Prince introduced this song at a folk club concert he was giving a couple of years back, he said, now, these are Indigenous teachings, but They're not just for Indigenous people. He said, you know, I think if all of us honored these teachings, we would all be so much better off. And I have to say, I agree. This song opens with a chorus, a simple chorus, and the only lyrics you have to sing are woo-hoo-hoo, and it goes like this. Woo-hoo-hoo, 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 woo-hoo-hoo. Try that with me. Woo-hoo-hoo. Words to honor, words to live by. Friends, thank you so much for being with us this morning for this service. It's now time for our virtual coffee hour, and it's a great chance to meet people, to talk about some of the things that were discussed in the service today. So whether you're brand new to our services or you've been coming for a long, long time, please click on the Zoom link that will appear very shortly in the chat area of your Zoom screen and join us for coffee. Thanks again, all. Be well, be well, be well.